Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Consider this your covert briefing on the hidden psychological forces that are, right now, actively shaping our political reality. We're going to pull back the curtain on how information is designed, not just to inform you, but to completely rewire how you see the world.
I mean, are your thoughts really your own? It's a serious question. We all love to think of ourselves as these perfectly rational beings, objectively evaluating facts and making independent choices. But what if your rational mind is constantly being bypassed? What if the everyday mental shortcuts your brain relies on, the exact same ones that help you, say, pick a brand of cereal without having a total meltdown, are actually being hijacked?
Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to the anatomy of a mind hack. Based on the research we're analyzing today, we really need to stop thinking of propaganda as just, political advertising or enthusiastic arguments. Instead, it's a lot more accurate to look at it as a highly sophisticated computer virus, except this one is written specifically for the human brain. To truly understand this, we've got to look at the actual definition. The research tells us that propaganda is a set of covert and overt information strategies designed to manipulate behavior. And notice that focus on behavior, right? It isn't just about changing your mind or winning some debate. It's a systematic behavioral exploit. It's built to hack our cognitive vulnerabilities and completely bypass our critical thinking faculties.
All right, let's look at Section 1, Weapons of Emotion, or Bypassing the Firewall of Logic.
Propagandists know a very fundamental truth about human psychology. Affective dominance totally overrides logic. Basically, they target your feelings way before they ever target your facts. Now, what you're looking at brilliantly illustrates exactly how that emotional hijacking works. This is a Soviet poster for Sergei Eisenstein's film about the October Revolution. Historically, the actual storming of the Winter Palace was a largely peaceful event, virtually no bloodshed. But Eisenstein's film turned it into this bloody, dramatic, and violent spectacle. Why? Well, because the propagandists understood that by leveraging fear and moral outrage, they could forge a really powerful in-group social identity. They literally rewrote history to make it emotionally resonant. Feelings over facts every single time.
Moving on to Section 2, Exploiting Cognitive Biases, the System Bugs.
So what are the specific glitches in our mental hardware that make these emotional payloads so deeply effective? Look at this breakdown of cognitive vulnerabilities, backed by researchers like Daniel Kahneman. It shows that our brains prioritize speed and comfort way over factual accuracy. Let's take confirmation bias. We actively seek out information that validates what we already believe. Propagandists exploit that by feeding us highly targeted, ideologically aligned social media posts. Then you've got source confusion. You might remember some terrifying claim, but completely forget where you heard it. That allows state propagandists to hide behind unnamed experts or shady proxy websites. And finally, the illusory truth effect. This is where the brain essentially equates familiarity with validity. If a totally false threat narrative is repeated enough times, your brain literally begins to mistake that familiarity for the truth.
And that brings us to how these biases are actually combined in the wild. The research highlights a crazy effective tactic called cross-source fusion. Think of it like this. A propagandist takes a genuinely credible institutional reference, like a real government agency or a verified scientific report, and seamlessly blends it with a massive fabricated conspiracy. By anchoring the lie to just one recognizable truth, it triggers a halo effect. You recognize the credible cue, and your brain just automatically assimilates the giant lie attached to it. It makes it incredibly hard for the brain to reject.
Let's hit Section 3, Delivery Mechanisms, and how they weaponize this at scale.
Having mapped out the psychological theory, let's see how these mental exploits are physically delivered to the masses. This little device literally changed the world. It's the Volksempfänger, or the People's Receiver, from 1933. Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi minister of propaganda, realized that radio was the absolute ultimate instrument of mass influence. So the state heavily subsidized the mass production of these cheap radios. Millions of Germans could afford one. In fact, by 1941, nearly two-thirds of German households had one. Think about that. It was a direct line to the public's cognitive vulnerabilities. By monopolizing the auditory environment and putting the party's voice straight into people's living rooms, they essentially installed a permanent backdoor to the public mind.
But here's the thing, you don't always need overt state control to manufacture consent. According to Noam Chomsky's propaganda model, modern capitalist media structures actually naturally filter out dissenting news. These 5 filters, the sheer size and profit orientation of massive media conglomerates, reliance on ad revenue depending on corporate sources, the fear of flack or negative blowback, and the fear of a common enemy, they create this environment where the news is subtly shaped to favor government and corporate policies.
It just goes to show how systemic pressures can act as a delivery mechanism for a very narrow set of acceptable ideas. No dictator required.
And the sheer scale of modern delivery? It is staggering. 82 million. That is the number of viewers in Russia who watch around 4 hours of state-controlled television every single day. Through over 6,700 monitored channels, the Kremlin feeds an enormous population a carefully scripted narrative. This daily multi-hour immersion constantly reinforces that in-group illusion we talked about, amplifying truths and constructing illusions that resonate really deeply with what viewers actually desire and fear.
Section 4. The fire hose of falsehood. Time to crash the system.
This leads us directly to the modern evolution of these tactics. Notice the really sharp contrast here. Conventional persuasion relies on being truthful, credible, and consistent. But the fire hose of falsehood, which is used heavily in modern Russian propaganda, it abandons consistency entirely. It's high volume, multi-channel, incredibly rapid, and severely lacks any commitment to objective reality. It isn't trying to win a reasoned debate, guys. Its goal is to entertain, confuse, and completely overwhelm the target audience until they believe the actual truth is fundamentally unknowable.
Because remember that system bug we just discussed? The illusory truth effect? The more we hear it, the more we believe it. The more we hear it, the more we believe it. When a fire hose of falsehood pumps out rapid, continuous claims across dozens of proxy websites and social channels, your brain gets exhausted. It stops checking facts. It just starts relying on that frequency heuristic. Even if the claims completely contradict each other, the sheer volume and repetition make them feel super familiar and therefore true.
Finally, Section 5, defending your brain and installing that firewall.
So how on earth do we fight back against this? Well, this quote from RAND researchers pretty much nails the challenge. Don't expect to counter the fire hose of falsehood with the squirt gun of truth. Let that sink in. Simple fact-checking is practically useless against high-volume manipulation. By the time you've carefully, meticulously debunked a single lie, the fire hose has already flooded the zone with 10 new ones, and the audience's brain has already been primed by the initial emotional hit.
Building genuine psychological resilience is all about understanding exactly how we're being manipulated. So here are 3 vital steps from the psychological research. First, forewarning. You absolutely have to pre-prime the brain with correct information before the disinformation hits. Give the truth that first impression advantage. Second, expose the manipulation. Don't just argue the facts. Explicitly call out the cognitive tricks and emotional triggers they're using on the audience. And third, fill the gap. When you remove a false narrative, you can't just leave a void. You've got to provide a credible alternative story to replace the fabricated facts.
So we've seen how emotions bypass logic, how our own cognitive biases get heavily exploited, and how massive high-volume delivery systems can literally overwrite reality. Propaganda isn't just retro posters on a brick wall anymore. It's this invisible architecture built into the media we consume every single day. So I want to leave you with a thought as you scroll through your feeds later today. Is your media diet feeding your mind, or is it actively hacking it? Stay vigilant out there and keep questioning the source.